the parent to both Bird and Spin for all of those that have been around and remember, of course, Spin before it was acquired. You're operating in over 275 cities worldwide. Stewart was also the founder and CEO of Bird Canada since 2019, I believe. So kind of really since the beginning of things as we've seen it. In early 2023, Stewart joined as the co-CEO of Bird Global, managing it through the global bankruptcy, I think alongside Michael. I see Michael here in the audience, which is great. I know Michael's on a panel later too. So I thought it was co-CEOs in case something really bad happened. There was like a key man policy, but you're both in the same room. So we'll hopefully be okay there. Stewart's background is both in a really interesting model I think we want to dive into with Bird Canada, going through the bankruptcy, coming out of it, and the reemergence of it. So just to start, Praveen's slide earlier today showed a really impressive metric around EBITDA. Let's talk about that real quickly. What's the metric that you think matters most to Bird today? What's the thing that you look at to know whether or not the business is healthy or not?
Great, and thanks for having me, Pravin and James. I think, look, ultimately, I know this is going to, ultimately it comes down to rides, because ultimately that's sort of at the bow of the ship here. So if we get rides, we can get revenue. If we get revenue, we can be profitable. We can profitably get EBITDA and EBIT and all the rest. So, I mean, for us, ultimately, if you ask me for what's the hero metric, so to speak, I mean, obviously we're trying to get rides. I used to have a boss when in the U.S. who always said, "No animals, no circus." Well, no rides, no money.
I like that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So if rides is the metric, if I go back to Praveen's slide though, rides are coming down slightly. Are you seeing a shift back up?
I mean, depends where you want to go back to, right? So
Sure.
Before our time, Michael and my time at Bird Global, Bird was all over Europe, for example. They were in Germany, lots of places, lots of unprofitable markets. So we had to, in fairness, that process even started before we came on board. So it's now a company that's growing, that's back in a growth mode, but we got rid of all the markets that were unprofitable. So, I'm sure back in 2022, there was a lot of rides, and there's less than that today, but that's purposeful because now we're every market we're in is profitable. We're not in a market that's not profitable.
Got it. But you're now looking at that ride metric as one that you want to see grow.
Yeah, I mean, it starts with rides, and then it comes to how much money you're making per ride, and the profitability, and unit economics, and all that kind of stuff. And then at the end of the day, you get EBITDA and then EBIT, obviously.
Yep. Did Bird really lose $300 million in 2019?
Yeah. I mean, it was when we came into it. So just, I mean, I had sort of a bit of a, no pun intended, bird's eye view on the situation because I was running a company called Bird Canada, which is a separate company from Bird, but it was sort of like a franchise. We obviously got the technology and the scooters from Bird, but we ran it independently entirely in Canada. And our investment group is now the equity investors in Bird Global, well, what's now Third Lane Mobility. So we all saw, kind of all of us kind of saw what Bird was doing. We were profitable. We were profitable from the get-go, and we knew there was probably a different way to run this business. But Bird, I mean, all hats off to Travis. He started the industry. I mean, none of us would be here today probably if it wasn't for Travis. But I mean, often when you do that, you pick up good habits and bad habits. And I think the problem with them was they just got into too many areas that just were not profitable and too many deals that were poor deals. So whether it was too many people or too many bad deals or bad leases or bad arrangements, I mean, I'll give you one example. So I used to be in the wireless industry, so I know that industry pretty well. And Bird decided they wanted to have a global SIM card so that a vehicle could go anywhere in the world and connect. The problem with that is roaming rates are different everywhere in the world. They're pretty low in Europe. They're higher in North America. They're way higher if you go to like Fiji or some random place. So if you get a global SIM card, you're going to get the highest common denominator of pricing, not the lowest.
Yeah.
So the first thing I did is I went back to the vendor for the SIM cards and said, this deal's a terrible deal. I'm not. So anyways, I think we cut, I don't know what, $5-6 million out of that line item alone. So, I mean, it was a lot of money to cut in a whole bunch of places.
Yeah. What was the original pitch on Bird Canada? Like, what was that? Especially, again, you're in this high-flying moment. The company is on fire in a lot of ways. Growth at all costs, maybe. You come in. What's the pitch that says, let's franchise the brand? let's build it profitably. I'm just very curious what that original pitch deck looked like.
Yeah, there's a guy in the back corner of the room. He's hiding out, but Kevin Talbot in the back corner is on our board, and he came to me, actually. I'm going to call, well, actually, one of his colleagues came to me, but we met in 2019, 2018, 19, somewhere around there. And he had his firm, Relay Ventures, which is a prominent Toronto VC, Canadian VC, had invested in Bird Global separately, and his plan was to let's try to bring this to Canada because they hadn't come to Canada yet. And I had done a relationship sort of similar many years prior, which is actually where I know Michael from when we did SiriusXM Canada, which we sold to SiriusXM, the larger entity. It was kind of like a license arrangement. So we basically set out to set up the same arrangement, and we did. And the arrangement was we operate independently, and eventually we would sell the business or vend it back into Bird Global. But just we assumed that you operate a business, you're trying to be profitable. Yeah. So we were never growth at all costs. We're like, well, why put out 10,000 scooters? We could put 1,000 scooters and be profitable.
Yes.
So we were growing at a much more measured pace. We made money pretty much 6 months out. We made money. Our CFO was JJ there, who's with us still today, and the business was doing great. So we knew that there was a way to do this business profitably if you just kind of do it in a more measured way.
Yeah.
So that was kind of how. And then what happened is about 2-3 years into the business, basically Bird Global called us and said they were having financial challenges. So we had sort of two choices at that point. We could sort of let the chips fall where they may for Bird Canada, or we could sort of double down and invest and roll our business into Bird Global. And obviously we chose the latter. All our Canadian investors stepped up and we raised money and we put that money into Bird Global, took over the management and the board, and then set about on a sort of a 3-part plan to clean it up. The first phase was obviously cutting costs and cleaning up the structure of the business. We had a few big changes to make in terms of vehicles. They didn't have swappable vehicles, which we didn't think was the right call. The business model was like very purely a franchise model, which we didn't think was the right call as well. So we cleaned all that up. And then the second phase was restructuring, because ultimately, you get a business like this and just years of decision making has led to things that you can't change overnight.
Yeah.
Whether it's litigation, leases, contracts, you name it, it had to be done with the restructuring. That's why we restructured the business. And then this third phase is kind of the coming out and the butterfly emerging from the cocoon, so to speak.
Fascinating. Okay, a couple questions off this. So we're in Europe. I think a lot of times we talk about the U.S. market. What is the Canadian market like? How would you describe it? How is it different?
Well, we're very proud of our success there because we dominate and we still have a lot of the core people we had from 2019. Yeah. But Bird in Canada dominates. We have 70% market share.
Wow.
Neuron is there as well, which is an Asian competitor, and we dominate Lime there, which is not common, right? Lime pretty much has a pretty good foothold everywhere, but not in Canada. Because we knew that we knew our cities, we knew our country, we knew how to operate, and we knew how to speak to the cities, and we were just successful out of the gate. So we dominate pretty strongly in Canada. I mean, but Canada is Canada. It's sort of like, it's like Northern Europe or something. In the winter, you don't run a lot of scooters. Yep. So yes, we have some small programs in the winter, but pretty much it's a very contingent labor-based model. Yeah. I mean, we used to joke that in the summertime, we'd have 1,000 people running around doing everything, and then in the wintertime, we have 8 employees. Yeah. So it was our success was based on having a very contingent labor model.
And where is Toronto in all this?
That's the bane of my existence, James. So I live in Toronto. I've lived there my whole life, and it is probably the single largest global city that doesn't have a micromobility program.
What's going on?
Oh, do we have 4 hours to go in Toronto politics? It's just poor. It's not the best. I mean, you could say it's about micromobility or 25 other things that Toronto's fallen behind on, but weak mayor, staff that really run the show there, and if they're not interested in doing something, they just don't do it, and it needs a little bit of injection.
Do you think Toronto is foreshadowing anything? Is there anything in there politically or in how it works that we should all worry about?
Not really. See, Toronto actually has banned all forms of scooters, whether they're private. If you are you're dropping off things for Uber Eats or DoorDash, scooters are illegal. Yes. But you go to Toronto, you see all kinds of scooters, which is classic Toronto. We're going to ban this and not do anything about it. And then, it's just it's a long story, but Toronto's we have an expression in hockey, scoring on your own net. Yeah. Toronto's a place we like to score on our own net a lot. It's kind of a Canadian thing.
We have that problem in California too. Yeah. Okay, so you opened in a really good way, which is Bird really was so much of the spark of the innovation, right? And markets tend to mimic each other, and entrepreneurs tend to mimic each other. And so you were the first out the gate. You're kind of you're the first, to crash in a way, to do the full bankruptcy, and now it appears you're coming out of it. Do you think the entire market needs to go through what you did? Like there's companies that haven't declared the bankruptcy. There's companies that have some of the VC money from 2019, 2021, that are still trying to get through it without the full hard reset, the cultural reset that you did. And do you seem to be potentially the playbook for, hey, you can get through this, but is there a lot of others walking around that need to do what you did?
I think probably a couple of years ago for sure, but today I think Voy's done an incredible job of cleaning up their business. Dot's done an incredible job of cleaning up their business. I think everyone's kind of seen the light. Lime, probably started this even before Bird did in many ways, starting cutting back on stuff. We just did it the way we did it because in the U.S. you could take advantage of these, and in Canada take advantage of these laws to keep a business going and shed unnecessary costs. So we kind of ripped the Band-Aid off very quickly, whereas I think a lot of the European players are doing the sort of the slower rip, but they're getting to the same place. Okay. And everyone realizes the cost structures early on were not good, and that's a factor of a couple things. It's a factor of how they ran the businesses and the unit economics. Yeah. And they obviously connect, but the unit economics is as much a function of the hardware. So between us, Voy, Dot, we use a lot of 9-bot hardware, and I know they're here today, but they've come a long way in the hardware they've made. It lasts longer, it's better. And by the way, again, I used to be in the wireless business. I've seen this movie before. Yeah. In the cell phone business, when I first started, or even before I started in the wireless business, the cell phone companies, even in Europe or North America, they made software on top of the cell phones, believe it or not. They had walled gardens where they'd have music and games, all this crap. And they had all these different, they had 25 different cell phone manufacturers. Today there's basically 2. Yep. And that is, again, this is not an accident. This is how regulated businesses evolve. This is kind of our theory from the very beginning of how this business would evolve. There are moats in a regulated business that kind of raise up over time, and consolidation ensues as the regulations get more reasonable and more protective, and companies start to realize they need to consolidate to grow, and you'll see the same thing here. We've already seen it between Tier Dot, ourselves, and Spin. I mean, you see that in all kinds of places. So my point is, it comes down to the hardware and the software as well, which are again evolving into longer lasting and kind of similar across the board, where you differentiate on your own software, but not on the software that's on the vehicle.
Okay, this is a really cool topic. So I was riding yesterday. I was riding a Lime bike, not to pick on Lime, but that bike had some wear on it, right? And I thought to myself, okay, they're starting to get into that place where they probably competitively can keep fleets on the road longer. They have less competition. And as far as they're concerned, let's ride that asset as far out as it can be. Good for them if that's the way the regulation works, and they can put vehicles out that aren't necessarily up to what the consumer might expect, and the consumer has no choice. Nothing wrong with that. They in effect could win. On the hardware software game, what do you think about what's happening right now? I guess very US centric, but with what appears to be happening with Waymo against Uber and Lyft, where let's take the Bay Area data. Bay Area data says now that Waymo's doing more rides than Lyft. There's 300 Waymos in the Bay Area. There's 40,000 Lyft drivers registered, not all driving at the same time. And then you also have data that's saying the consumer, outside of the novelty of it, is willing to spend almost twice as much on the Waymo as they are on Uber. Uber's moat was this idea that they were the aggregator. They got the regulatory approval. And now you're actually seeing maybe the hardware software could make the difference. So is there a concern that if we're all just 9-bot Segway shops with our own regulatory moat, is there going to be a new entrant that's going to come in and just totally change the game, like appears to be happening in rideshare? Is there worry about that? Do you stay up at night thinking, hey, are we competitive enough at the...
It's a good point, and it's a good question, although I don't think to the same extent, because the regulations for micromobility are a little different than for rideshare. Although you can't have the scale. I mean, Uber is a huge company.
Yeah,
And so
very
is
big.
Lyft even. And so is, Bolt. Like they're not these companies. You can open James's rideshare tomorrow and you'll have 0.0001 market share and you
Yes.
can. So you'll never get the market share, but and that's a business point. But on the regulatory side, I mean, you're just not going to be able to go to, I mean, name your North American city or European city. I mean, you're not going to go to New York and they're not giving you the license for Bronx and Queens, which we have and Lime has. With James's micro, you're just not getting it. There's insurance issues, there's history issues. Most of the U.S. markets now, first of all, they're all RFP based. So that's as I said, how the moat gets higher. Moat getting higher, number one, is all going to tenders, which is slowly happening a little more slowly in Europe, but already there in North America. There's not a single North American city that doesn't have either an RFP process or a quasi RFP process.
Yes.
So I mean, yes, you're right. I mean, the whole Waymo thing is a little bit extreme because it's Google, first of all.
Yep.
And that's a totally different, that's like a massive innovation in hardware where you have an actual robotic vehicle, which that's a totally different thing. Yes, I do think obviously that's disruptive. But I think in our industry, I think really your potential new entrants, unless it was some like Uber or Waymo stepping down into micromobility, which obviously they're not. I mean, Uber has Lime. We have a good partnership with Lyft, by the way. We have a pretty strong partnership in North America for that. So I don't know. I don't see that happening with new entrants. I think I see the opposite. I see consolidation.
Yes.
I think there's a lot more consolidation that's going to happen. I think you're going to see Lime and everybody else.
Yep.
In one way or the other. The question is who's in the everybody else, but I think that's for sure the way it's going to go.
Yep.
And then those two people suck up all the capital. And if you're a new entrant, sure, you could be James's scooter company, and maybe you win a, Encinitas maybe has your local town will give you the business, but that's where it's going to stop, and that's where it's going to go.
So if I were to play that out though, does the consumer lose here? Because what I think I hear you saying is like, there's these moats. The vehicles are going to be the vehicles. They're not going to be very good necessarily. Like, what's going to push the industry forward? What's going to make it safer? What's going to make it better? What's going to make it so I don't ride these things and I feel like I'm on a e-bike from 2017.
Well,
and it's got
I don't know. I mean, the hardware is definitely getting better. I don't think the hardware is slow. I mean, on the hardware side, it's way better than. I mean, like this.
Who's pushing that though?
The manufacturers, because if Ninebot doesn't show me good stuff, I'm just going to buy from Okai or Quick Wheel. Any of these. I mean, there's still
What are
many
what
guys.
are those contracts like? How quickly could that happen?
Well, I mean, it just depends what you negotiate, But I mean, it's the same as your iPhone. I mean, sure, the pace of innovation with the iPhone has slowed down, but an iPhone in 2025 versus 2010 when they first came out, it's like night and day. I mean, it's like a supercomputer versus like a like a nothing, like an abacus.
Are you pushing these manufacturers though? Do you feel like
you're getting? Of course we are. Yeah, I mean they ask us what would you like to see and we tell them sidewalk routing is a big thing. The more sidewalk tech, the great. How it can work with our own hardware and software, or we tell them what kind of detection can you have or double all the stuff that cities care about. Precise parking, stability, shocks. The alloys and the metal because we northern markets get salt on the roads, all that stuff. I mean, we push them all the time. I mean, we have these conversations. Bikes. I mean, I'd say there's probably even more innovation on the e-bike side now than there is on the scooter side and the bike situation. I mean, you look at the form factors they have out there. They used to be big wheels. Now we're going with smaller wheels because it's a lighter vehicle. I mean, we'd love to see a way lighter e-bike with a swappable battery. I mean, so I think the hardware innovation is just getting going. It's just that why would we spend money on the hardware innovation when hardware is not a great business for us to begin with? It's not great for Dot. It's not great for Voy. I mean, none of these companies want to be in the hardware business. Just like Verizon doesn't want to be in the hardware business.
Yes. So what would keep you? I like your going up the stack of moats. Like where are you? What would keep you up at night? Is it an entrant that's heavily capitalized like a Google that would come in and say, hey, that looks like pretty good rent-and-singing business. Like, let's go grab it. And we can differentiate on the hardware side, it appears, if everyone's just using the same hardware. Or is it sweeping regulation reform, political swings? Like, what are the things that truly are
Good,
scary to the business?
That's a good question. I would say the regulatory reform is something that probably keeps it up a little bit because you do see weird stuff happening, or they, mostly it's. I mean, I don't like the whole thing with Paris getting rid of scooters. That was sort of a non-event for us because they just went from scooters to e-bikes, and Dot and Voy just they'll be the first to tell you how happy they are about the situation. They're not upset about it. And most cities, whatever they take away in scooters, they go with e-bikes. I mean, we just did an RFP for Tampa. They added a bunch of bikes, took us. It kind of goes left and right. So that's not the issue. But there are cities that, do they do something, where they want to go exclusive, and that creates, challenges where you're fighting us. We're fighting with Lime, sort of tooth and nail to win the day, or. But I think for us, ultimately, it's we all have big fleets, and our challenge is convincing investors that this isn't the classic capital-intensive business where you're just doing replacement capex, and that these things really do last a while, and it's sort of like you have to kind of just do it in stages, but it's a great business even with the capex situation. That's really the biggest issue. Is it's really on getting enough capital to constantly refresh the fleet and always afford those new technologies.
Yep, that makes sense. In terms of the regulation, just to speak on that a little bit more, like, are you, you mentioned, yes, scooters go out of vogue for whatever reason, but it's just an e-bike. That's an easy swap. Is there anything happening at the regulation front that is actually concerning beyond just like, we don't like scooters anymore, let's go e-bikes? Are you actually seeing people say, hey, let's remove these systems.
No, because I mean, I don't think there's a city in the world that's not looking at either a dock bike share, and we do have some dock stuff we've done in a couple places. We've got some subsidized programs. People don't know that we've got subsidized programs in some campuses and other places and some cities. There's obviously floating e-bikes, not docked e-bikes, and obviously scooters, and probably there'll be some other form factors down the road, I'm sure. And now, in the U.S., what's become a big thing is you've seen this with Lime, even in Europe, and our smaller competitor, Veo, is sort of the throttle e-bike is another thing, which is where you kind of gray the line between e-bike and electric motorcycle.
Yep.
It's funny because Bird had a vehicle like that, the Cruiser, years ago, and it was sort of a little bit before its time, but Pratt remembers the Cruiser. But now that's become like a really hot form factor in North America, where people like like the throttle-based e-bike. I guess it's a little more stable than a scooter to them, and it gives you the throttle. So we're doing that as well. But that's kind of the next thing.
Yeah. So you mentioned it a couple times, but let's go back to Lime. Like, what's the story on Lime? Like, how have they been able to sustain, do so well, grow? I know in years past we've had Joe, we've had Wayne. What's that story, and are they?
Well, I mean, hats off. They're good operators. I mean, I'm not going to take away from give credit where credit's due. They're good operators. They were probably first before anybody to kind of try to clean up their business and focus on a good operating model, B, swappable, all that kind of stuff. They were very early in that respect. And they've been aggressive.
How much does Uber help them, do you think?
A lot. Oh, yeah. Certainly in North America. I always stop people riding a Lime, and I always, whenever I'm in a U.S. city, and I always say, why did you choose the green guys over, Bird or whatever else? And I get one of two answers. It was right there, which is probably I get that 60% of the time, maybe 70%. But the 40% I get is I had the app, and I'm like, oh, which app? Oh, the Uber app. Like, they don't even know that there's a Lime app.
Yeah.
So I've heard rumors that it's 30% of the revenue, maybe higher than that. I don't know what it is, but
what could be your equivalent to distribution?
Lyft. We have a relationship with Lyft. Now, the unfortunate thing is Lyft is a lot smaller than Uber. But look, it's a great partnership for us. They're certainly way bigger than we are. They also have a bike share business as well, so they get what we're trying to do. We have great partnership. We just acquired one of the markets from them, Denver, which is a great market for us, and they've been super helpful. And I think they're just, they're great guys, so we've really enjoyed that partnership.
Have they tried to acquire you, or?
No, they have their own, as I said, they have a dock, very decent size, as you probably know, very decent sized mostly docked bike share business.
Yep.
But look, I think down the road, can we do something more with that? For sure. I mean, we've already come in the 1 or 2 years we've had the partnership, we've really come close, because I think we all get where the future is and where we're trying to get to.
Yeah. Okay. In terms of your business, again, it seems like you and Michael, fantastic operators, all this experience working in regulated environments, being able to build profitable, businesses. Where do you go? Clearly, more cities are going to open up the micromobility. You can gain a certain amount of market share versus your competitors. Are there other adjacencies that you would actually go into where you'd say, hey, let's take what we're good at, because there's probably profits we can extract in other places too. How do you think about that?
We've actually thought about a lot of that stuff internally. I mean, it's a good point. I mean, and we've been approached by other companies doing different things, whether they're in the field of traffic management or anyone who has a business where they do stuff in a municipal environment, where they're out in the field doing things with, they have thought about coming to us, or we've talked to them, or we've thought about going to them. And because we have lots of people that are out in every major municipality, particularly North America and in major parts of Europe, that can do things. They're fixing vehicles, swapping batteries, doing all that stuff. So, that's an army of people that can do a lot of things for a lot of different businesses.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Anything close?
We've certainly had some good conversations with a few companies that do things. Yeah, I mean, I can't get into too many details, but there's definitely opportunities there for sure.
Where is the next 10 points of margin in your business?
It's a good question. Look, I think as it evolves, I mean, we've always thought that there's a huge market, and I think Lime's kind of been ahead of us on this and one or two, but there's all this partnership stuff that really has not been touched too much. Advertising, which has sort of we actually had advertising at Bird Canada even in the early days, and advertising's a huge thing. I mean, you see that in dock bike share all the time, and that's really been the surface has barely been scratched. That I know, like Human Forest and others are pretty far along in that. There's also just wholesale partnerships. So a lot of companies have campuses. Yep. I mean, that whole industry is a whole other piece, and that's decent margins. I mean, especially the advertising for us. It's a lot of it goes right to the bottom line if we do advertising.
How big is the advertising business?
I don't think it's like hundreds of millions of dollars, but it certainly depends. I mean, we have a lot of downloads. I mean, ultimately, it's how big is your app and how many physical things you have. And the bikes are even better for advertising than the scooters are because they have more surface area.
Yep, that makes sense. I want to go back to potentially a little bit just of the macro landscape. So let's say the autonomous vehicle trend continues as it seems to be. It seems like Dara from Uber is out there constantly trying to act like they're an autonomous vehicle company now, doing as many press releases as possible. Here in Europe, there's a Wave announcement. In the US, there's this really weird dynamic with Waymo that's going down. Let's assume the data continues and Waymo becomes a real player, and then we have next Tesla with the robotaxi announcements in Austin coming out. Proliferation happens there. Uber increasingly will be squeezed from a profit margins perspective. The aggregator model that they have potentially really starts to break down. Do you think they come into micro more seriously with Lime because that's naturally a place where there does seem to be profits and less disruption? Or are you concerned about that? Because it does seem like Uber's stammering a lot.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like a stable business right now.
I don't know. I mean, it's a huge business. I mean, this is a massive business right now. I mean, the stock's at pretty much an all-time high. Like, I don't know. They have easy access to capital. It's a huge. I'm like the difference between us and Uber or Lime and Uber, it's just galactic. So, I'm not worried about companies that have billions of dollars of cash at the ready, but they face an even more healed competitor in Google. So yeah, I mean that is a fascinating situation. I mean, I don't want to get too far into the robotaxi thing, but I mean, the reality is it's a very different ballgame what Waymo's doing versus what Tesla's doing versus what Uber's doing. I mean, think of you go out after an event, and North America is very event heavy versus Europe, which is more commuting heavy. But I mean, you finish a concert at the Staples Center or whatever, some big event. Are you going to have 1,000 Waymos sitting there idling, ready to go? Probably not. I mean, that's a lot of capex and everything else, and that's where the Uber and the human scale up, scale down part is advantageous. So I mean, there's a lot of factors there. So look, I think Uber has their micromobility bet in Lime. They have a very strong relationship with Lime. I think it's been a mutually very, very strong relationship for both of them. Uber has a lot of investment in Lime. So I think they've already made their bet. Do I think other companies ride share? Well, you got Bolt obviously already. So I think that play that card has already been dealt. Do they get deeper in it? Who knows? I mean, Lime, obviously, as everybody knows, is talking about doing an IPO separately. So does that mean? I guess that means they kind of go in a bit of a different direction. Who knows?
How should we think about the Lime IPO? When would that happen?
I think if you ask any of the micromobility leadership around the table, no matter big or small, I think everyone's pretty excited about it because it's all good news. If it's successful, that's great for all of us. I mean, if they're able to raise capital and do that, then that's great. I think it shows the industry is real, it's profitable, and I'm rooting for Lime. I hope they have a very successful IPO.
How would you think about going out? Naturally, your investors.
Well, we did that before. I don't want to do that again anytime soon.
No?
Look, to do an IPO, particularly in the United States, you have to have a certain amount of scale and size. You have to be in a certain growth trajectory. You have to have a certain amount of factors. I've run multiple public companies. I would have never taken Bird public. It was not an easy, and the SPAC path was a challenging path. But anyways, it was what they had to do at the time. So I don't begrudge them for it, but it's not where Bird is today. Maybe down the road, for sure. But not right now.
How do your investors see the investment? Do you think what's their window? What's their timing like?
Well, they've been. I mean, I got one in the back corner, but
what's your timing, Kevin?
He's been in it since 2000. Well, earlier when he was in the Bird investment, but I think. They're patient. I mean, they see the future of this business. They see it as a real business. It's growing constantly up and to the right as every city expands micromobility programs, and they know that the consolidation is going to happen. So there's a good outcome at the end of all this for everybody, I think, as long as everyone plays their cards right and keep trying to be profitable.
Yep. Let's go a little more rapid fire. We only have a couple minutes left. What is most exciting about Europe?
Well, Europe. I mean, look, Europe is the heart of micromobility. I mean, our business is, I don't know, 70% North America, something like that. But that's not where the growth. I mean, Europe is still growing probably faster than North America is. Probably it is growing faster. That's where people use it as a community. Europe is the future, actually, and North America is a bit of the laggard. I mean, I don't think I'm telling tales out of school. We like to see North American cities do what European cities do, where, even here in Brussels, you see the commuting traffic, you see good traffic Monday through Friday, people using it as a commuting device. We'd love to see more of that. And there's many more bike paths in Europe than there is in North America. A lot of North American cities are getting there. Atlanta, for example, has got a lot of great bike paths. Toronto, where I live, has got a lot of great bike paths. New York has a great bike path infrastructure. A lot of North American cities are getting there, but it's still, the heart of the car. So it's still a bit of time to get there. But Europe is where it's at. I mean, this is the heart of micromobility. This is where the growth is, and that's why you see us, when we have a lot of growth opportunities, we really focus probably more on Europe than we do on North America.
And how do you do that? What's that go-to-market look like? And especially in lieu of what you said, and McKinsey backed it up, right? You got one or two players. You're not the one or two biggest companies in Europe.
Yeah.
How do you fight?
Well, we had to retrench. I mean, we were bigger in Europe, and then we had to retrench. But, we've been trying to grow it. We just launched in Germany, for example, which was a big deal for us. We were in Germany many years ago, came back to Germany. We made it to the finals of the Paris RFP for the bike, which was a big stretch for us because we don't have a big presence in France. But, I think we've been slowly showing that we're going to try to grow the business. We have a strong presence in the Middle East and Israel and other places. So we have pockets. We're very successful in Italy. So we have pockets where we're still pretty dominant. We just have to keep investing in the vehicles and growing the business.
Yeah, that's it's definitely a challenge. How do you think about you mentioned a lot the e-bikes, and clearly you come from the scooter world, but if you had to only have one mode, what would it be?
Well, I think the future, it's not me setting the agenda. I think it's the cities, but it's probably, it's probably 60-40 e-bike to scooters. I think e-bike is certainly growing at this pace for sure, faster than the scooter market, maybe even more than that. But we're more focused on e-bikes now in terms of growth than we are on scooters. The scooters are kind of like the bread and butter in many respects, but I think the e-bikes is, as I said, with the throttles, everything else is probably where the growth is more so than the scooters.
Final question: which brand do you think is worth more, Bird or Lime?
Well, I can't not say that Bird is worth more. I know the public markets might disagree with me, but look, I'll say this. One of the things that excited all of us when we kind of got into this business is Bird is the Kleenex of micromobility.
Yeah.
In North America, for example, probably a little bit less so in Europe, but in North America, a lot of people say I'm going for a Bird, even when they're riding a Lime.
Yes.
So it's the Kleenex of the industry, and that is really powerful. I mean, Bird is a very powerful brand. People often underestimate that.
I agree.
But when you go to North America in particular, and to a lesser extent, but still in Europe, Bird is everyone knows the logo, they know the brand. When they think of riding vehicles, lots of people still say Bird.
Yep, agree. Stewart, Bird is an inspiration to the community and what you guys have been able to do. Thank you for coming and answering all these questions, and thank you to Bird for really being, I think, a symbol to the market and what we're all trying to accomplish.
Thank you.
So please
Thank you for
join
having
in
me.
thanking Stewart for coming.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.